Welcome to the Quantum Revenue Expansion Podcast. My name is Ursula, and I'm a sales expert, strategic business coach, and USA Today bestselling author. I love sharing strategies that show you exactly how to turn your annual revenue into your monthly revenue. If you're looking to take a quantum leap in your revenue or sales, your team, your productivity, your success, and your life, then you are meant to be here. My goal in every episode is to help you take your belief that it's possible to 2x or 10x your revenue while working way less to knowing that it is happening right now. Hey everybody, welcome back to Quantum Revenue Expansion, where we talk about turning your annual revenue into your monthly revenue. Super excited because we have one of our CEO table members today, the amazing Lucius Jonett, and we're going to be talking about whether or not you are selling or solving. And we're going to dig into that today. I know you're going to love this conversation because I've just watched Lucius over the last 6 months have a total quantum leap in how he views the sales process, how he supports his clients, and just so many shifts. So get out a piece of paper and a pen. I guarantee you're going to want to take some notes, and this will probably be one of those shows that you listen to over and over again. Lucius, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Good morning. Super excited to participate.
I bet you never thought you'd be talking about selling on a podcast. Probably the last thing on your mind 6 months ago.
Absolutely not. That was probably the biggest fear I had going into business. Like, I'm not a salesperson. I don't know how this is going to work.
Yeah. So that's why I'm even more excited to have you here today. So I will introduce Lucius in a moment. Just a couple of updates. If you haven't yet, definitely grab the Belief Zone Masterclass. It's a free gift from us. It's a free download where we talk about how to really set your quantum revenue container, that next level, what that means, and the beliefs you need to shift to make that a reality in your world. Where things like Lucius was just talking about, like, how do I shift this fear of selling or this belief that I'm not a salesperson so that I can actually grow my business? So all the details are in the show notes. Grab your free copy today. All right. With that, let me tell you about Lucius. Lucius' favorite work as a landscape architect is the restoration of degraded natural systems, which I love. I don't know anyone who does what you do, Lucius, but it's so needed, especially in the beautiful state of Minnesota. He's not afraid to move dirt, trees, or water to recreate what natural places should look like. The biggest testament to a job well done is when clients cannot remember how a project looked before and struggle to imagine that it was ever anything different. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And as I'm saying that, I'm looking out over wetlands right now that I appreciate and am so grateful for every single day. So let's just start with your story a little bit. You have a business that restores landscapes. How did you get into this world? And then how did you make the crazy decision to start your own business?
Landscape architecture is a second career of mine. So kind of starting a business is almost like a third career in this long history of starting out as an electrical engineer, getting tired of kind of windowless factories and traveling the world to install projects, and really kind of searching within myself, kind of like, what's missing? What do I want? And it was really kind of working with the outdoors and with nature. And so I decided to go back to school and got my master's in landscape architecture and picked up a certificate in stream restoration, and it totally made sense looking back as my childhood playing on the local creek with my, best friend. We'd ride our bikes down there every day, catch minnows and tadpoles, build our little mud cities and kind of run rivers through them. And so it just seemed to fit. And so once I had that appreciation and understanding, went into that wholeheartedly. And so graduated with this whole new degree, decided to start a career all the way over, which was very exciting and in your 30s because you're not 18 anymore. Like, you've got a little life experience. You're like, well, this is how I would like it to go better this time, or, more efficient. And so I spent 8.5 years with a large multidisciplinary firm, kind of learning the practice and really focusing on stream restoration. And so the opportunity came in 2019. New environmental regulation required mitigation for stream impacts, kind of like the program that already exists for wetland impacts, where we've lost so many wetlands, we can't afford to lose any more. So what we do is we kind of trade credits, kind of acres of, if you do an impact, you have to restore something somewhere else, and again, that alignment of restoring, taking something degraded, putting it back into the stream or the wetland that it wants to be, like fits right into the mantra of, the introduction you gave. So
Right.
taking a drained farmland and putting it back to where it's actually holding water, plants, animals, kind of the whole ecosystem. And so when that regulation came out, I'm like, I've always wanted to start a business. I just never knew what. And so it all came together when that regulation came out saying, here's a new market to kind of be the specialist, to work with clients, navigating this murky regulation. And here we are 5 years later, and it's still not clear. It didn't pan out as quickly as I'd hoped. And so that was one of the challenges and kind of what brought me to the group to kind of figure out and brainstorm, how do I get over this hurdle?
Yeah. So no pun, but like it's murky, just like the wetlands want to be. They want to be murky again. I'm totally laughing because there was a ditch that my brothers and I used to go to, on the weekends and, after school. And because I grew up on a farm, so we had a lot of wetlands, and my family was definitely into preservation of wetlands. In fact, there's still some wetlands that I think would have been pushed out, like filled in a long time ago if my family hadn't bought certain parts of land. Anyway, the ditch down the road, I sometimes wonder what chemicals were in there. I hope those chemicals are better today, right? It was like all draining off the farmland, which sometimes we don't think about all the chemicals that are in it. But we used to play in that ditch all day. We used to like wade in it. It wasn't safe at all. But that was the 80s when for me, we were feral children. We just ran around. No one cared. If we came home by dark, that was a good thing. So definitely feel you on the wetlands. So Lucius, so you were talking about you were really following what was showing up in front of you, the heart's desire, like your desire. You were following your interest. And it's funny, like not funny, but interesting. We have a lot of engineers who come into our programs and learn how to sell. And so it's fun because I think especially when you're, engineering brained and that's how you think, moving over to the sales side is like, that's a quantum leap. So I just want to congratulate you because not everybody makes that leap. And then it's like, it's just easier to go back and, work for someone else. So, and you were saying too, like things stayed murky and how, like what was possible and, how the restoration projects were supposed to work. So share a little bit more about that. Like you were kind of out there. It sounds like you were on your own island, so to speak. And then you raised your hand and you showed up in our world. How did that unfold?
Yeah, I think it came, it was really one of those do or die situations. I mean, it was getting pretty desperate where it was, the easy path is just go back to corporate and kind of join a larger firm again. Um, but if I don't sell anything, like that is literally going to be the linchpin of making it, because mortgage
Yeah,
payments are coming due. And it's like, well,
we have
all right,
bills. Yeah.
I got to pick up the phone. I got to figure this out. Even then, it was still like I was so in my own way of how to do that or how to proceed, and then it was just, kind of coincidental. You showed up. I think I watched one of your presentations at SCORE and kind of on
Mm-hmm.
the 2X, and it was just like, yep, this is what's needed. This is what has to happen.
Yeah. So I just want to say, I want to give a shout out to SCORE, who has been in my world and a partner for, I don't know, over like, I would say almost 2 decades. I've been invited in to speak and I feel very privileged and honored because that's a big deal in their world. They've allowed me to come in and really share. And so for you, it was like you said this, it was like do or die. And I know there are CEOs who are out there listening to this right now, right? You're listening to this for a reason. Maybe you're at that kind of do or die moment, like where it's like tempting, like I could go back into the corporate world and work for somebody else. And you can. And for some people that might be fine. But for you, there was like this, like you just knew, like there's part of you that also knew you didn't want to be back in the corporate world. Because for some of us, that also can feel like dying, right? So you're like, no. And I just want to commend you because, for the CEOs who come on the show, they're often in your situation where it's like, yeah, I'm worried about paying the bills. Like, in other words, it's the least convenient time to have to invest in coaching or anything in your business. It's like that throw up moment. I've been there. We've all been there. And yet you did it. Like, you took the dive, you took the leap, and so much has unfolded. So talk about a little bit about just making that mental leap of investing in yourself when you were like worried about paying the mortgage. I mean, that's a lot.
Right. But it felt like if it was going to not work, if it was going to fail, the big scary fail word, it was, I wanted to make sure I did everything that I could have done, so that there was no regrets, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, it is a big investment, but if it doesn't work, I end up back in corporate anyway, and we'll pay it down, and no big deal. So what's the real risk here other than
Wow.
the chance to succeed the way I want to?
Yeah. And you stepped into that fully. And I will say this for anyone who's listening, whether you ever step into one of our coaching programs or someone else's, like being all in, and Lucius, that's what I saw for you, is like you were all in. You were like, tell me what to do. Just tell, I will do anything. I'm highly coachable, anything. And I do remember like one of the first things was, my question for you was, have you ever made a cold call? So let's go back to that moment of like, am I willing to make a cold call? What does that even mean? And maybe you'd made some before you showed up in our world. You were willing. But what was that process like back in January when you were like, I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to start sending cold call emails? What was that like for you?
It was terrifying. I had tried before, and it was a huge kind of stumble. It was just kind of, you're blah, 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 just kind of babbling on the phone. And like, oh, that's not going to work.
Right.
Hang up, try again. And, you know, super skeptical in all honesty, where it was like, okay, I hear what my coaches are saying, like pick up the phone, like we even worked on scripts together, just work on this. And making those first couple and being super obvious, I'm reading off of a script where it's just like, oh, I shouldn't have picked my, like, don't pick my prime prospects first, like I should have
Right.
practiced somewhere else. But
Yes.
we just kind of kept going, and it's like, no, like I know this is what I need to do, and so I'm gonna do it. And still super scared, I would stare at the phone. I can't tell how many times I'd pick it up and then hang up before, like, I'd actually press the dial. It took so much energy to get behind it and kind of get into that mental space, because it's a huge shift. I've just noticed, having to produce very technical work is a whole different mindset and a whole different energy than kind of administering a business or working on the marketing components. So
Yeah.
just having to make those changes and kind of get into that space. And so then it was like, all right, I identified my prime time early in the morning, first thing in the morning, probably earlier than clients want to get phone calls, but it kind of gave me a chance to, kind of focus and just kind of hype myself up of like, okay, it's like, we're just going to rip through 4, we're going to start with 4 calls and get that done. And so doing that, the first couple were very rough, because it still felt like I was selling. I was asking somebody like, hey, random coincidence, do you have a stream stability problem that you need solved? 99% of the world has no idea what that even means. So it's just kind of,
Right.
how do you call and ask somebody for something that's so kind of specialized? And so somewhere along the way, it really opened up. And I'm sure it was conversations with you and Rebekah of just like, what am I really doing? And it was kind of this, we're not selling somebody. Like, I can't convince somebody to go have a stream problem. Like, that has to exist. And so it's, changing from a sell mentality to almost an advertising of, hey, like, even my existing clients didn't really know what I was doing. I had a non-compete, so I had to disappear for a while. Now I'm back doing, they're not sure what. And so I really started with telling my existing clients, like, hey, I'm still here. I just have a different name. Like, I work for myself. This is what makes me special. This is the problem that I solve. And so once I got a few of those under my belt, then it became much easier to just pick up the phone and, identify a prospect and say the exact same conversation. This is who I am. This is what we solve. if you have problems, we'd like to be considered. And here's the other things that we do, because, even though it's one person right now, we're still multidisciplinary. I have a landscape architecture degree. I do the stream ecology stuff. And so I kind of dance in both worlds. Sometimes they combine, and those are really fun projects. But, there's revenue opportunities on both sides. And so making sure all my existing clients know everything that we do, because almost all of them only know me as one thing, whether it's a landscape architect or as a stream restoration guy. And so easy sell to existing clients of like, hey, we also do this. And then opening that door with prospects and really just doing that advertising, and it paid off. And it took a long time, because I started making those calls right away, because I knew it was, desperate times. And I think just last month, so 7-8 months later, actually got some return calls of, hey, we had that conversation, we had a meeting, we remember you do this, we've got a project we would like you to work on. And it was super exciting, because it was a sole source. Like, they didn't go out for public requests for proposals. It was just, hey, you said you could solve this. How much is it going to take? And what's the process?
Right on. And today, when you think about your client load and the work that you're delivering 6-7 months later, what would you say about it?
It's super exciting, just because we've hit that inflection point. We've hit our 2x goal. It's there, it's on the map, it's real, and it's tangible. And now it's kind of the flip side of I'm kind of nervous, because there's so much coming, like, the perfect problem to have. So, but what's also interesting is, that shift from selling to kind of solving and just explaining who we are and what we do has given me the confidence to just connect with other businesses. I can call another CEO and just say, hey, I'm a business owner, I'm a CEO, you are a CEO. How are you solving this? Like, can we have business conversations, or is there a future alliance? Like, can we partner on projects and kind of produce that? And so this whole kind of burden has been lifted of like, somebody could come in and say, hey, you should call so-and-so. It's like, okay, grab the phone, let's go. Like, I don't have to do that mental preparation and energy preparation anymore. And what's really interesting is kind of, we're on that inflection of the 2x. And I know you talk about kind of that 10x, or when, your yearly revenue goal becomes kind of that monthly reality. And we're definitely not there yet, because we're just at that inflection, but I can see it. And in those conversations with my clients, they've told me how to get there, because they keep asking, hey, do you do this? Hey, can you also do this? And that identifies kind of hiring opportunities to bring in additional technical expertise, just to help solve their issues, generate more revenue for us.
Yeah. Well, so let's unpack this for a minute, because you've just shared so much gold for people that are listening. So number one, you were patient. I think even on days you didn't want to be patient, when it's really hard. And I know, like, we come to the CEO table, and for those who are listening, like, the CEO table isn't always happy. Most of the time it's like somebody's struggling with something, and that's why we bring it to the table to work on. And, there were times when I know, like, you were struggling, but you showed up, you kept smiling, like, you kept going. And that, to me, is the difference between those CEOs who make it and those who don't. Like, you did the other things. You set the plan, you created the revenue model, you were willing to pick up the phone, even when you didn't want to. And huge points for, like, and this is for everybody, like, you make calls at the same time every day in the morning. And I find that CEOs who make the calls in the morning, even if it feels like too early, that's what I used to do. Like, it felt super early, but it was, I would do it. And doing it is better than not doing it, no matter what time it is. And I can tell you, Lucius, and I'm going to put this out, and we're going to put this in the space right now. The CEOs who have come to the CEO table, not everybody makes cold calls, but for those where it made sense for their business, for those who made the cold calls consistently, they have 7-figure businesses now. And so that is like you said, you can see the 10x and you're starting to have different conversations. So me as a coach, I can hear the quantum leap continuing. And you and I talked about this at the CEO table, or came up this week or last week, of just now's the time to like, don't stop making those calls, even though, yes, there's so much business to deliver, even though this is a different problem and quote unquote problem or opportunity, whatever, in terms of staffing and systems and processes, keep picking up the phone. That's where your 10x will be. And that's for everyone who's listening. Like, when you're doing well, that's when you got to double down, make sure that you're building. So this is totally unscripted. Most of the time it is, you guys, like, who is listening, like, there's the questions that we, that are out there. And then there's the questions that I ask. And so I'm super curious. And so, Lucius, you can take a second to think about this. But what I'm wondering is, if you could go back to when you first started in the program, what would you tell yourself then? Like, what would you say to Lucius then that might have taken a whole bunch of stress off, or just might have helped shift some things for you?
I think if I could have told myself to just relax, I think it would have happened sooner. All that time staring at the phone, not hitting the button to make the call, and just kind of the faith and the belief that it will work out. Like, if you put in the effort, something will pan out, and we remember hearing in our table conversations of just like, it's there to be had, and it's just a matter of asking for it or making yourself known so that it can come to you. And and it snowballed to the point of now we've got former clients from 6 years ago. I wasn't even in business for myself, are calling me now as they move through the world. And it's a very small community, a very specialized community. But as people change jobs and roles, companies, they remember who you are. And there's, that's just part of the snowball that's going on right now. And it's, super exciting and a relief, like, just to kind of smile walking into the desk. I'm like, yeah, we're there. Like, it totally panned out. And there were 6 long months of no calls, or, it felt like I was chasing people that wouldn't respond. And I still have clients now that are so busy just with the flooding that we've been having in Minnesota. They're so distracted with more immediate emergencies. Like, I have one client that has reached out, long-term client, and they're just like, I know, I owe you a phone call. You keep calling, just to connect and check in, but I'm so busy. Hey, we got this job. Can you just take care of this for us? Like, and kind of the joke is like, well, I'll do this job if that's how I can get you out in the field so we can actually have this phone conversation that I've been trying to have for 6 months. But
you're like, okay, I'll say yes. Well, okay. So there's something interesting that you just, and this is kind of like, tapping into beliefs about money and about sales and about those pieces. So you being willing to be persistent. Okay. You just said that, like, you're like, you might've called somebody 6 times. When you do that, when you follow up and you're persistent, are they like hanging up on you? Are they like, Lucius, stop calling me. Don't ever call me again. Like, instead, like, what do you know now about being what we call in our world professionally persistent?
Yeah, I think I've only had 2 clients, 2 prospects that said, hey, stop calling us. We'll contact you if we think of anything. And that was, and even then that was powerful, because it was just like, okay, well, I'm going to take that time that I was spending on you and I'm going to move that to another prospect. So no harm, no foul, not a problem. Like, okay. But everybody else, nobody's hung up on me. And what I intend to be, like a minute phone call, an introduction, sometimes turns into a half hour to an hour. I had one client just happened to start talking about fly fishing, and it was like, oh, I'm going to Montana fly fishing, just that was a couple of weeks ago. And all of a sudden, an hour and a half later, he's giving me all the spots, because he used to work for Forest Service out there, and so I was like, we got this really strong personal connection. And so it's so much easier now to follow up. And I think, that's what I really love about kind of the consulting business, is we get to know our clients on kind of a personal level. It's not just projects and work.
Right. Because like Brian Tracy used to always tell us, right? People buy from people they like, know, and trust. It's about building those relationships but you can't build relationships if we're talking to ourselves in the office, right? We have to pick up the phone and have those conversations, which is the hardest thing, but you've done it. And so now you know, and for everyone who's listening, like hearing what Lucius is saying, it's just when you're professionally persistent, it's not personal. People will tell you, like, I got your information. And even with those people, then there's still an opportunity to send an email like a few months later or whatever, or they might reach out to you, or sometimes something shifts on that team and all of a sudden someone else is in charge of it. So just, maybe gentle ways to still keep in touch with them. You never know what's going to unfold. So
Right.
what else? What do you know? Like when you think about the energy of money or creating revenue in your business, what would you say you've shifted about your mindset or your beliefs in that area, if anything?
I think that same kind of confidence that it's available, that it exists out there, because where I was getting really frustrated was like, I don't know who to ask anymore, or like nobody's calling me for, a stream restoration or a wetland restoration. And, it's just like, does anybody care? Does it matter? Like, did I start anything anybody needs? And, really worrying about that. But, through these conversations, because it's more than just calling, just going to networking events now, it's just a lot less intimidating because like I have a story to tell. Who doesn't like telling stories or hearing stories and kind of sharing their stories? And so there's just no hesitation now because I'm out finding who needs my help, who
Mm-hmm.
needs their problem solved. And so that
Mm-hmm.
is just so much more relaxed, and
Mm-hmm.
I've even reached out to the former CEO of my previous employer, and, we can have different conversations now of just, hey, you grew this company from like 10 to 300. What was that like? And, how do I go from one to, we'll say 5 is kind of our
Right.
goal. I call it moving the mountain of just kind of like, how do you become one to anything bigger than one? And
Mm-hmm.
those conversations just come really easily and they're all super
Mm-hmm.
helpful, and you just never know who's out there.
You never know who's listening. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we have a few minutes. This went really quickly, Lucius, and I just want to thank you for sharing. So, as we're wrapping up, so for someone who might be listening and thinking, I wonder what it's like to coach with Ursula and Rebekah, or I wonder what it's like to be at the CEO table, but I'm afraid, like they're afraid or they feel stuck or they're a little bit scared to take that next step. What would you say to them?
Um, it's super helpful. Again, I had a high skepticism coming into this where it was just like, how is this really going to work in like an industry, a design consulting industry? And I, it totally did. So there was no reason that skepticism should have been there. And
Mm-hmm.
I think what really helped is just kind of the direct candidness, with you as a coach of just like, what do I say? And it's like, well, let's trade some emails and come up with scripts. Let's make this as easy and painful as it can be. And just kind of trusting in that, but, almost being told like, this is what you have to do and it'll work. And then doing that, seeing it work, and then kind of recognizing externally, you look back, you're like, yes, like these big quantum shifts were happening, even if I wasn't, consciously or aware that I was working on that. It was like, no, I'm
Yeah.
just solving this problem. I got to call people.
Right. So you stayed focused on just the next step in front of you. You did it in faith. And you brought up something really important. And I think this is so critical too, is that you didn't even believe it 100%. And that's the piece that, I think is so important. Like, even if you don't believe it 100% right now, like for anyone who's listening, if you don't, maybe you're in a coaching program, maybe you're going to come into our coaching program, you're skeptical, like Lucius was. I don't know if this calling stuff is going to work. And not everybody makes cold calls in our area or in our coaching, but it could have been anything, that, and you just didn't believe it 100%. I hear that a lot from clients. And my favorite emails when they're like, hey, you're never going to believe what happened. And I'm like, yeah, I believe. But like, even for someone who's out there, you don't always have to believe it 100%. And it's powerful to have other people around you, whether it's coaches or mentors or other business owners who believe, sometimes for you, until your belief catches up. So thank you for sharing that. And for someone who might be listening, I mean, yes, what you do is very specialized. We do have listeners all over all over Minnesota, all over the US, and actually now all over the world. Who would tell us a little bit about your ideal client and where someone might find you or how to get in touch with you?
Yeah, ideal client is any landowner or somebody that manages land that has concerns about, the quality of streams, wetlands, and habitat, and really wants to manage that to kind of improve that in several different ways. But, we love brainstorming. We love kind of taking a look and helping people just understand what's happening, what can be done, and kind of that potential, because we would definitely love to help make that transition for you so that you don't remember what it was.
Love that. Yeah. And you work with both the
Yep.
private and public sector, right?
Yes, yep. Private landowners and public entities, cities, counties, watersheds, state, at federal level, and predominantly in the Midwest. However, we have traveled to as far south as Texas, and we're making our way out west as well. So,
Very cool. Well, we have a lot of people out west listening who wish they had more water right now, although I think they're coming out of their drought. And what is your website? And do you hang out on any of the socials, or where can people find you? And maybe your email address as well, and we'll have that in the show notes.
Yeah, you can find our website, midwestwetlands.com, all one word. We're also out on LinkedIn. You can find the company or myself. And then my email is Lucius, Lucius, at midwestwetlands.com.
All right, Lucius, so much fun having you here today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. I know it's going to help a lot of people. I can feel the ripple effect that this is going to inspire people to pick up the phone or just keep doing the things that even when they don't believe. So thanks for being here. Appreciate you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And thank you for all your help too.
Oh my gosh, our pleasure. Rebekah and I have loved working with you because you're like, I'll do it, whatever the thing is. And to our listeners all over the world, we appreciate you. Thank you for hanging out with us every week. We promised you at the beginning of the year we would have a show every week, and it is happening. Email us at contact@ursulainc.co if there's anything we can do for you, or if you have questions you'd like us to answer on the show, or I just did a show with Rebekah that was unscripted. So if you have questions you'd like us to ask each other, send those in as well. That's it for this week, everybody. Make this your most profitable, amazing month yet. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you loved what you heard, be sure to leave a review on iTunes so I know what you like and can create content that guides you to uplevel your business even more. If you want more strategic business tips, follow me on social media. You'll find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and you can visit my website at www.ursulainc.co. I love being on this journey with you and can't wait to connect with you on the next episode. In the meantime, make this your most epic month yet.